Hello there, beautiful. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr and welcome to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Now in today's video we've got another batch of BT pluses on the way, our second in fact, and today we're going to be discussing Ace, his brand new gear, Bartz, the upgrade to his BT, and the LD boards that come along for Kimahri as well as of course Dimensions and Transcendance 5. So it's probably going to be a bit of a long video again, so I apologise in advance for that, but if you'd like to know more about all of these characters and all of the Lufenias that come along with these particular missions, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Before we get started, of course, some quick reminders not to forget to check all of my social media links in the description box below, and of course not to forget to check out the meetup that we have happening in November, as I'm really looking forward to it. We've had a lot of interest already, so if you're in the UK and want to get together to look at DFFOO, or we just want to talk about Final Fantasy, get a drink together, maybe play some Smash, all sorts of things, then the venue that we've got in Meltdown is going to be a great place to do that, so definitely come along and just come and join in. With Patreon, I always shout out one of my patrons every time I release one of my videos, and today the person is going to be Kyle121787, who has Squall as their title card, and Squall's actually a very popular pick for title cards amongst my patrons, but a massive thank you goes out to you for your support and to all of my patrons, because without you I wouldn't be able to release videos and stream at the frequency at which I do. And of course, lastly, don't forget to check out all the other content creators and all of the other resources for DFFOO before we get started on talking about all of these characters and events. So now, of course, let's take a look at the banners, what's featured on them, and then go through each of the characters that's going to be featured on them. So, as you can see here, the first of these banners is going to contain Bartz, his full kit, returning BT, LD, all of that stuff, as well as Faris and her full kit as well. So if you didn't pick up Faris the first time around, there's another opportunity for you to do so here. And then the second banner is going to feature Ace, his full kit, so EX, LD, BT, all brand new. Well, EX not brand new, LD and BT brand new, and then also Kimahri's kit, and then Lise EX is on one banner, and then Freya EX on the others. We have Chaos challenges, I guess, for that kind of thing, but the EXs are nonchalant. With regards to Faris's kit, and Bartz for that matter as well. Now, Faris was featured during Bartz's batch the first time round, and I remember this because I pitied both Faris and Bartz's LDs when they came out and still had to token his BT the last time around. Now, Faris is really good as a call ability at this point, and a call ability only. Now, she is very useful for that, but realistically, I think that if you wanted Faris, you would have pulled for her the first time around. With regards to Bartz as well, like if you've got Bartz BT during this patch, then obviously you don't need to pull here. But when it comes to pulling for Faris, I think if you're pulling on this banner, it will be for Bartz's LD, it would be like LDBT, and then Faris will be a consolation prize, because while she's a very good call ability, she's definitely not something you have to have. So let's talk about Kimahri. Now, Kimahri's a character that didn't have an awful lot going. Like, he was fine, but he's always been overshadowed by a lot of other support-based characters. So if you haven't used him up until this point, he has a lot of defensive buffs and also offensive ones, and his LD gives him a big sort of healing ability, gives him access to massive stat gains as long as the characters are above a certain HP threshold, and he also likes to use his EX, which his Nova attack will inflict the total darkness debuff on the enemies, which is a guaranteed minus 100% accuracy for their next attack, so they'll always miss unless it's a guaranteed hit, at which point it will still hit. So there are usually better ways of protecting yourself against guaranteed hits than this. However, total blindness is a big thing, and it is useful to have, and because the EX isn't the fastest thing in the world to recharge, I think it's 2 skills that you need to recharge it, you don't get to use it as often as you'd like. However, the LD boards that he gets here actually help him quite a great deal here. So when you use this, you get a free ability on the next turn, you get 100% splash damage on it. It's still only a singular HP dump, which is kind of sad, but it's not really what he's for. But he gets some additions to his Winds of Gagazet buff, which makes it so that the initial bravery and attack goes up, you get HP damage up, you get all of his buffs and stuff get stronger, and his HP and brave damage go up as well. So basically it's to bring him up to speed with the rest of the cast. But what you actually get most out of this is you get HP++, which is jump++, which is like a bravery, like a brave battery for the party, 2-hit brave HP attack, and then you get your EX filled up for doing it, and it's got no action delay straight afterwards, and then you go back to either jump plus or whatever from what you had before. So this means that he's able to use his EX for the total blindness buff a lot more frequently. Now the nice thing with Kimahri is that his regular skills actually have multiple HP dumps in them. So you have Mighty Guard, so you have Lancet and Thrust Kick, then you have, you've just got some nice bits and pieces from that, so you can do some good damage with him. And then he has a stackable offensive debuff with Bad Breath, which combines well with his HP damage resist that he gets from some of it, like from using his Mighty Guard. He's got a lot of nice smaller things that go for him, but ultimately the thing you're using him for is that EX and the ability to now use it more frequently. So I kind of feel the same way about him as I do with a lot of these kind of secondary LD characters. Like, they're nice to get if you get them along the way to the main prize, but I wouldn't go chasing after him. He does a lot. He does a lot of nice things. He's got attack buffs, defense buffs, HP bravery gen, initial bravery, HP damage mitigation. He's now got HP damage increases for the party and stuff like that. He's got a lot going for him. But the only thing that really makes him stand out is that total blindness. So if that's not something that you're overly interested in, then I wouldn't go for Kimahri. But if it's something you think he'll use a lot, his LD boards help him do that quite significantly. So Bartz gets his BT plus here as well, and Bartz, I've gushed about Bartz a lot in the past and I've used him a lot in the past, but like his main focal point was how party sort of centric he was. He provided lots of buffs, lots of really nice stat increases, but the main thing that made him stand out, or things that made him stand out, were the fact that he dealt a lot of gravity-based damage, so he was able to shave bravery more effectively than a lot of characters do, and he also had that very interesting, like a rework last time around, where he naturally imperiled enemies for wind without actually having to apply the debuff to them. His Adventurous Spirit buff was an aura that gave enchant to himself and a wind imperil to enemies, so anything that was immune to those imperils wasn't, and you could just get past it. And then with his Good Luck Charm, you got Elemental Weakness damage up, HP damage up, Splash HP damage up, and then Party Brave damage, Party Attack, all that good stuff. Then his BT was good, and it was like his BT effect is really good even without, the BT plus buff, because you get attack up, brave damage up, HP damage up, and brave refund at the end of every turn. All he gets from this particular banner is the BT plus effect itself. However, it doesn't look like it gives him a huge amount, but it does. It's actually massive for him. So with a book, you get basically a few more brave hits and the attack gets a bit stronger, but with BT plus 2 out of 3, you get Party Wind Enchant at the first stack, and then as long as he's got it up to 3 stacks, so he's taken a couple of turns, you get Brave Gains up as well. Now this Party Wind Enchant is actually way bigger than you think it is. It doesn't sound like much, but bear in mind that his Imperil gets past elemental resistance. It doesn't get past elemental absorption. So if they absorb wind, you're not going to bring Bartz along. But you are then able to benefit, your party is then able to benefit from weakness damage pretty much the whole time. And then obviously with 3 out of 3 on the BT plus, you're then able to, use it twice and you get 8 turns of it both times. And the nice thing as well is if you use the BT plus or the BT phase before the end of the duration of the first one, so when it's down to 1 or maybe 2 turns or something, if you refresh the duration of the BT, it will stay at maximum stacks. So that's a really nice thing just in general, and he actually is part of a very, very strong core team of Cid Raines, Aphmau. We know how powerful they are already. Well, having Bartz as your third character, making it so that you've got those bravery funds, increases in damage, the wind enchant imperil, the gains up like being bigger from when it comes to battery from Cid. He's like the perfect third party member to fit into that slot. And he's a character that just can be used in a very, very wide variety of places because his auras are strong, his party buffs are strong, his ability to reduce enemy bravery is strong thanks to his LD and missile and all of that good stuff. He's got a fast recast, very fast recast rate on his EX, so he's got massive longevity. He's just a really good go-to character. He's probably not the most exciting character for a lot of players because he doesn't have an awful lot of uniqueness about him, except for that the amount of things he gets from his BT effect. And because of that, you are definitely going to want to give him the full whack 3 out of 3 ingots if you're going to use him, because without that, you actually lose out on a large majority of what he gives to the party. So he's not a character that you can just book and go. He definitely wants those ingots, but if you do, he will pay dividends in the long run. So now let's take a look at Ace. Now Ace is a very interesting character that actually changes his role quite significantly with his LD and BT. Now he does get a rework, but all you realistically need to know about the rework, because it's much more complicated than it sounds, is that his Mega Burst Plus and his Mega Spiral Combo Plus now have multiple HP dumps in them. His Mega Burst being a single target Brave HP multiple times that does splash damage, and his Mega Spiral Combo being an AoE Bravery attack that does single target HP. So that's basically, you can look through the changes to his burst and spiral combo, and the fact, although they do get +2 additional uses for each of them as well, and that's definitely a significant thing. But because of the LD and the way that it works, you would have originally had to build up stacks of his previous buffs, so cards and Suzaku's trump card, but you don't really need to do that thanks to his LD attack. So let's take a look at the LD attack and see what's coming out of that. So Jackpot Triad is AoE Group 8 Brave HP attack 3 times and puts a debuff on the enemies whilst also maxing out your Suzaku's trump card and your cards buff to put a debuff on them that is trap based. So Ace becomes a more trap based character. It does also add some really nice things to his Suzaku's trump card buff that he doesn't already have. So you get HP damage up, Brave damage up, Party Bravery damage up by 30%, and Brave Overflow. So that makes him more of a supporting role. Bear in mind that his EX, if you haven't used that before, also has his EX is not great at this point, but it's still useful. You'll probably still use it because you get one of these 4 buffs randomly, depending on which one you get given when you use it. So you get either Party Attack up, you get either Enemy Speed down, you get Brave regen and HP regen, so he can heal on occasion, or Attack and Max Bravery up for the party. They're not huge, but they help. And it definitely leans into some of the supporting stuff he does. But the damage portion of his LD comes from this trap. Now his trap looks more complicated than it is. So it puts defense down by 40%. So if you imagine Yu-Gi-Oh! Face Down card, that's what this is. The whole card is a face down Yu-Gi-Oh! Card. It lasts for 1 turn until the enemy turn happens, and then when that turn happens, it inflicts a trap called Blind Stud. So Blind Stud does a 4-hit Brave HP attack and then changes itself into Blind Stud Turn, which is a 6-turn version of the same thing. Instead of relying on the enemy turn to go off, it happens after every action. So not only is this just a 4-hit Brave HP attack, it also does splash damage, it also does Bravery Battery for the party. So after that first turn has gone off, the card turns face up, and then it continues to go off. So for the next 6 turns, for the next 6 actions, whether it's yours or the enemies, they're going to be taking off-turn damage. And we all know how much I like off-turn damage dealers. However, that's not all, because when you activated that, once you've actually done the Jackpot Triad, the LD attack, you also get an HP plus attack that does exactly the same thing in terms of applying the whole card debuff. Now, you can apply the whole card debuff on the enemy while they have the Blind Stud on, but obviously if the whole card goes off, then it's going to reset the Blind Stud back to 6 turns, and if it hasn't already run out, then you're wasting damage. So you want to make sure that if you are going to reapply it, because both whole card, so face down card, and Blind Stud card, face up card, have 40% defense downs on them, you can stack them. Just be careful that you don't let them get a turn before your blind studs run out, because otherwise you're just wasting blind stud turns. But it all adds up to a lot of damage, and because these go on to all enemies, in terms of AoE damage, you would be surprised quite how much damage you get out of this LD. Now obviously it's not just an LD that we're getting with Ace, we get a BT as well. Now Ace's BT is one of those ones that I really like for the same reason I like Zidane's one. It's very versatile. Ace can work very well with just his LD, as a matter of fact. Like, that LD provides supportive buffs, it does a lot of damage, it does off-turn damage, it can be used in a variety of different ways. It's just solid, but obviously he's going to be better if you have the BT. So his BT attack is a multi-HP dump or 2 HP dumping Brave HP attack, obviously. And then the buff from it is another kind of weird one. Like, it starts at a stack of 1 and then goes up to 3, similarly to Bartz's, and it increases party max brave attack, stolen max brave overflow, HP damage, and max bravery cap up until it stacks to 3. It obviously lasts for a little bit longer than that, it lasts for 8 turns, but when that buff has run out, you get a trap trigger after it, which is a 3-hit brave HP attack, AoE, split damage, and you don't use your bravery up doing it. So you get a really nice big extra attack at the end of it as well as at the start of it. And then with BT plus 2 out of 3, it makes it so that the attack and max bravery overflow evens itself out a little bit more, so you're not just waiting for the 3rd stack, so you get a little bit more out of it. And the potency of the We Are Right Here, the finale attack that comes at the end, hits that much harder. And then obviously 3 out of 3, you get to use it twice. Now, like I said, I really enjoy the fact that with Ace, you can have him with just his LD, you can have him with his BT, you can have him with his BT with the book, or you can have his BT 3 out of 3. Now, obviously, he benefits from the more you give him, the better. But if you want to give those resources, limited as they are, to somebody else who really requires the green, like Bartz or Ishtola, for example, then he's a great character just to have in your back pocket and, you know, pull out when you need him and just have him as an extra. He's a solid damage dealer. He's very, very good at what he does, and just having access to him obviously benefits your party by having the damage dealer, off-turn damage, support capabilities, even the occasional healing. And what he gets from his BT effect is obviously very nice, and if you want to invest in him more heavily, then you'll get more use out of him. He's a character that I see a lot of people, or people I speak to from like JP players and stuff, that say that they'd wish they'd pulled on him if they hadn't already, and the people who did pull him say that they were surprised at how long-lasting he ended up being and how much his the trap damage actually did a lot for him and how much they'd enjoyed using him. So like, you know, he was popular when he came out because obviously a lot of people pull for everybody when they come out. But there were a lot of players that I spoke to that said that they didn't pull for him when he came out and then wished that they had. Now, in terms of high armor and calls, so high armor wise, Bartz we knew before had, because he was one of the first characters to get blue armor, had Unity's Keystone and then only increased his own HP and bravery damage limits by like 30%, 10%, which was a bit sad at the time, and it is kind of a shame considering how party-oriented he is that he only increases his own damage. But I think that if you're going to use Bartz a lot, and a lot of people in JUP did when he came out for a very long period of time, then he's definitely worth the blue if you have the ingots spare, because he can. But if you're needing them for other characters, that's also fine as well, because he is quite so party-oriented. Ace is attack keystone and then increase his own bravery damage limit by 30% and HP damage by 10%, so the opposite way around. He's, you know, again, with high armor at this point, and to be honest, with a lot of things going forward, a lot of this stuff is very subjective because most characters will function well going into it, like the far future, C90 era. Like, there's a lot of characters that do really well, and I've seen Ace used even in recent content in JP, so it's all down to the personal preference. Kimahri has a support keystone and then has party limit by 5% and 15%, so 5% brave, 15% HP. It's rare that you see HP damage limit for party go that high, but I don't think I would spend out on Kimahri personally, but if you really love him, there is an option, there is an argument to be had for him. Kimahri's call abilities actually I quite like. Like, they're very versatile. They're not like a staple-y one, like your Warrior of Lights, your Farises, your, you know, bits and pieces, like, or your Jacks, your Kurisames, etc. But there's some versatility to it. So His regular call gives you HP damage resist and bad breath, which is a attack and max bravery down and a poison, so it is quite defensively oriented. And then White Wind is a mass heal followed by a brave HP attack that then gives you AoE damage because of his LD boards, and also thanks to his LD boards, not only are we getting party brave regen, initial bravery up, which is kind of naff, like, to be honest, but adding 20% HP damage up to your party is actually quite a lot on a cool ability. So if you're using it on your third party member that's not really getting turns, if you're using Cid Afmau, for example, you could use this in combination with something like Kurasame to kind of build your HP damage up and then make it so they take more HP damage as well, so you could build it up that way, because like I said, 20% isn't something to sniff at, and when you've got brave regen going off at the same time, there could be arguments to be had for this. Is it a mandatory pick? Not by a long shot, but if you happen to have Kimahri, I'd at least look at it. Ace, on the other hand, I think if you're going to take him, you're not really taking him for his call ability. It's not horrendous. I mean, like, the LD call's not horrendous. His basic call is just damage. It doesn't really do an awful lot else. It's his regular spiral combo, so it doesn't do as much damage as it should. And then Jackpot Triad does have the triple HP dump, and it does inflict blind stud turn, so you get the defense down off of it, and you get 4 turns of blind stud activating each time. So it's fine. It's just a shame that both of his calls aren't particularly good. Blind Stud being active on the enemy means that you've got 40% of defense down, but you're only going to have that for the next 4 actions as opposed to the next 4 enemy turns. So it's going to run dry really quickly, but it does still have the splash damage. It does still have the battery at the end of it. It's fine, but honestly, if you're going to use a trap-based call, I would prefer something like Celes instead, or like something that like lasts on the enemy a little bit longer than this, because Ace tends to like just piling on damage as opposed to it just being on enemy turns. Okay, so now let's talk about Dimensions End Transcendence 5. Now, the thing I will say about Dimensions End Transcendence 5 is that it's actually more simple than a lot of the other ones we've had. That's not to say that it's necessarily easier, but if you have the correct characters, or at least the means to use characters you wouldn't ordinarily in a roundabout way, then you can get past it. The middle gate in particular, however, has a very interesting mechanic that we've not really seen before. So the left gate is going to require a green crystal, which is what Ace is, and requires off-turn damage. So what these guys do, the Lunatic Heavy Gunners, they increase the Lufenia Orb is there at the start, doesn't go away until you finish it, and it increases by 2 whenever the target receives an attack that's caused by a ticking debuff or a special effect. Now, this is very, very finicky about which abilities work with this and which ones don't. So, traps, some of them like work well, like Emperor works, Celes works, Ace obviously works. However, some abilities don't. Like in some of the clears that I've seen that use Beatrix, I've noticed that Rose Petals doesn't seem to trigger it. I have, however, seen reports that Vivi's LD follow-up actually works to increase the orb here as well. So with this one in particular, the best thing I would suggest is to just take trap-based characters. If you have Leon in particular and his LD, that's going to do you really well here. The enemies are weak to magic for a start. They also don't have any elemental attacks really, so you're just going to absorb all of their stuff. So, you know, having any kind of tank-based trap character like Leon or Celes will work really well here. And then I've put Agrias here as well, because if you need to control the abilities of the enemies, but then she's going to do very well here, and she's actually very good for the middle gate as well, so you want to slot somebody in here. There's lots of characters that you can take around for this. Obviously, Ace is going to be your best bet when it comes to green crystal character for the purposes of the Lufenia mission and clearing for this middle gate. Now, the right-hand gate requires a yellow crystal, which obviously was what Bartz is, and this one's actually a bit weird in its execution, because the fight itself is actually very easy. Like, we've fought the Cavaliers before, and the fight itself is just quite simple in the sense that most of the clears that I've seen typically opt for a 0 boss turn run, where you'll use either Zidane or Afmau and Raines, or any kind of way to just stop the enemy, lightning even, to stop them from getting any kind of turns or anything like that. However, the orb is very odd in that it increases by 1 when the target takes elemental weakness bravery damage, but they are immune to elemental resist. So they're basically asking you, please take Bartz to this. They do also increase when taking wind bravery damage. So with my example teams, I always try to like not go for the synergy characters or anything like, or at least the characters on the banners, in case people don't necessarily want to pull for them. So I found there's an interesting way you can get around this, and it doesn't require pulling for Bartz at all. So it doesn't even necessarily have to have Aphmau and Raines in it. It just has to be able to prevent the third character, which in this case is Yang, who also happens to be a yellow crystal, to not get turns, basically. So what you can do here is you can use Bartz's basic call ability, because it happens to enchant Yang and also imperil for wind on the aura in the same way that Bartz does. So you can use Bartz's base call, not LD, any of that, give it to Yang, and then use Aphmau and Raines or whatever means you're using to just stop the enemies from getting any turns whatsoever, and Yang having his follow-up constantly dealing wind weakness damage to the enemies, so you're able to get past the orb that way. If you wanted to, obviously a lot of people do have Bartz, so if you've got him, definitely use him here, because he's obviously going to do very well. And you don't necessarily have to use like Cid Raines and Aphmau either. You can use Ishtola, you can use Tifa, if you, God forbid, you have Tifa still active. They're all yellow crystal characters, so there's plenty of options there for you, and honestly, to make your life easier, I would just suggest a zero boss turn rush. Now the middle gate is where things start to get really interesting, because the Luvenia orb is almost not important. In this, it's the actual mechanics of the fight that are really different. So you'll be fighting royal mummies and two adds that it also brings along, so smaller mummies. We fought zombies that were similar to this before. But, so the orb asks for the target's bravery to be less than 10,000 when the turn ends, which realistically is nothing. It's got Lufenia plus style mechanics in that, like, when you get towards the end of the fight, the damage reductions are going to be really high, so you're going to need to bring powerful characters along for this. However, you're going to need to really take note of HP thresholds, because when you hit 79%, 49%, and 29%, the adds will self-destruct, and if they were above 50%, they will kill you instantly. So, as if a Lufenia orb went off. So you have to deal enough damage to the enemies while still obviously controlling the main enemy and making sure that both of the adds are under 50% health every time you get to those thresholds. So whether you're using, like, I mean, I believe it expects you to take Ace here, to be honest, because obviously the traps are, there's 3 enemies, there's lots of there's the LD debuff trap going off and just dealing lots of damage to each of them, so that's going to help you out quite a lot. But you can do this with a wide range of characters, and keeping them under control is also going to be very helpful, because they do do a lot of HP attacks, and the main Royal Mummy does a pretty hefty HP poison on you. But if you're taking Cid Raines, you aren't going to care about that because his EX is going to cleanse it. So what I would suggest is if you've taken Aphmau and Raines for the right hand gate so that you can just get through that with no boss turns, then you can use that for this as well, and then you just want to make sure you're taking a strong third character. So I opted to grab Agrius from my left hand team to make brave gains, brave damage, HP damage, and also keep control of the enemies, so that all I really needed to focus on was making sure that the enemies were staying down, or the adds were staying down under 50% HP, so that I can just use Raines to do as much damage to the front guy as possible so that they don't explode and kill me. Once you've got that groove going, then the only thing you'll then really need to worry about is the large damage reductions that you'll deal with after 30%, because that's when it starts doing Lufenia plus things, and then you really have to worry about that. But just the biggest thing about that fight you have to be cautious of is taking those adds down before the main guy, while still dealing the main guy enough damage that you're actually whittling him down and not wasting your skills and time on the other sides, because the turn counts are quite tight. So now we come to the question of whether you should be pulling for either of these characters, or any of these characters for that matter. Now, with regards to the LD only characters, Faris, I think if you've lived this long without her, you can probably continue to do so. She's a great call ability, but the chance of you using her in your main team is pretty minimal at this point. And Kimahri's Kimahri's good. Like, he's much better than he's ever been before, and he's, like, got his niche, like, his ability to, like, put the blindness on enemies and, you know, be able to do that with a much greater frequency thanks to his LD boards, and the fact that they've brought him up to speed when it comes to party buffs at least a little bit is fine. He just does, like, a lot of little things, but not enough to really stand out. Like, you know, the blindness is great, but there are enemies that do, like, guaranteed hits with some of their stuff, and it's kind of useless on those, so it's not as good as certain other debilitating abilities from the likes of, say, Agrius, for example. It's good, it's just not one I would actively chase down unless you really like the character. With regards to the BT Plus characters, honestly, asking whether you should pull for some of these BT Plus characters, it really is quite a subjective thing. I think the things that people need to know about these characters are that they're both very good. Bartz is a Aura Bot's dream. Like, he has literally everything you could want from an Aura Bot. You know, his BT plus 2 out of 3 adds just the finishing touches to make him practically perfect for a Aphmau and Cid team, because Aphmau has the heals, Bartz has the Imperil Enchant and the batteries, and all of this. Like, it's like Destiny's Child, where Cid is clearly the Beyonce. But like, I think that it's just a really fun thing, and Bartz is very good in and of his own right. He has the gravity-based things. He's very good at shaving bravery. He has a lot going for him that a lot of people would really like. However, he definitely wants to have his BT and 3 ingots if you're going to use him. So if you're only going for him for his LD, I wouldn't suggest it. I think you would really want to have his entire kit. Ace, on the other hand, I think works very well with just his LD, or with a BT plus 0 book, or green. Like, he's a character that I'm personally really looking forward to, and I may end up spending gems on him because I think he's a very interesting character. I think his way of dealing damage is quite unique. He provides a strangely large amount of buffs to the party, particularly if you have his BT. And his BT has 2 finishes, like one when you use it, and one when the BT buff runs out. I think it's cool, it's fun, it's interesting, and I love off-turn damage dealers, and I think the versatility of Ace's abilities mean that he will pay off for however much you're willing to go on him, and I think that that's really nice in and of its own right. But if you don't necessarily want to go for his BT now, then you could go for his LD and then go for his BT later, because if you've got BT tokens, for example, then you don't have to spend them on the same day, for, you know, and even if you don't want to, you still have a half-decent character with his LD just on its own. So I think that Ace is very worth pulling for on that fact alone. And lastly, it's time for Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewers, get your chance to have your voice be heard and let everyone know whether you're pulling on any banner and why. So once again, a massive thank you goes out to all of my patrons for casting their votes and their comments, and if you would like to see the full database of comments, then it's something that's given to my patrons as well by discussions that we have, and if you'd like to join up with it, then you can see everything there, because I can only post so many comments per video. So, Bartz's banner, not surprising. 95% of people said they weren't pulling on this banner, and 5% of people said they were throwing just less under 100 tickets. This is not because Bartz is bad, far from it. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The reason that people aren't pulling here for him is because they already have him, and I think that if you've been playing for a while, if you were after Bartz and Faris, you'd already have them by now. Like, you don't need to be pulling for them here. I'm excited for Bartz, very much so. I pulled very heavily for him when he came out the first time. He'd probably be my first BT plus green. And then with Ace's banner, this one's interesting because no one said that they weren't pulling on this banner. 38% of people said they were using gems, 48% of people said they were using 100 or more tickets, and 14% of people said they were using less than 100 tickets. But nobody said no. Now, I don't know whether it's just for Ace, but for a lot of people I've seen saying that they were spending gems, a lot of them already had Kimahri, which I found very interesting. So let's go into some of these comments. Protomega007 says, gems for me, as this is the only Ace banner that I can afford to spend any resources on at this time. If there's one all-star in the BT Plus era, it's Ace. He was used by many content creators for a long time, and he was even used in early C90 era. Therefore, Ace is a must-pull due to his traps doing so much damage to all enemies. Every single turn that they're up, and he doesn't even need to be green to be great. So, I do think that Ace is really good. I do think he's really good. However, one thing that I will say is that if just because you haven't seen something on YouTube or from another content creator, it doesn't mean that it's not viable. I think that's something that's really important to point out to people. And I think that if I would like to encourage anything, it's experimenting with the characters that you like and getting things like combos and stuff that you want to work. Because if you haven't seen them before, then what's stopping you from showing everybody else? But I can see why a lot of people use Ace. He is very good, so I'm not surprised to see that people are pulling for him as much as they are. Winged Paragon says 100 plus tickets on Ace and Kimahri. I don't have any of Kimahri's kits, so it'll be a nice get while pulling on Ace. The combos he pulls off with other characters keeps him usable for some time to come. Again, Ace is really good. Like, to be honest with you, like, I feel like I'm splitting hairs at this point when trying to find reasons not to pull on BT plus characters, because there's so many things good about the vast majority of them. You know, that picking and choosing between them is genuinely really hard, because obviously you only have so many resources. But the fact that Ace is as versatile as he is with the amount of stuff you give him is really, really good. Multiracial Liar says, I'm pulling with gems for Ace. He gets a fantastic blow up with his LD, including party goodies and a really meaty defense down for enemies one, which happens to include a ton of extra damage. I'd love to get his burst, but I can live without it, as I'll be pulling for Prompto and Quistis. He has incredible longevity if you can get the burst though, long into C90 and current day JP. I've really been looking forward to this LD for a while, since it has the potential to enable a lot of combos with other characters. See, this is like the third person that said looking forward to the combo potential with Ace, and I think that's the reason that I want him as well. I think that it's just really cool to see characters that can just bounce off other characters. Cid Raines is one of those characters as well. You know, sometimes you can have really powerful characters and them not be boring, and I think that Ace is definitely one of those characters. And then finally, Luca Yasha says, I'm willing to try no more than 100 tickets for Ace. I already have everything else on both banners, and I'm not going to be pulling on any of the future banners featuring Ace's BT. I plan on greening Bartz as well, and even if I was lucky enough to get Ace, LD, and BT, I don't think I'd even book it. Going to be using Ace's banner as a resource saving opportunity. So there's nothing wrong with this either. Like, I think that if you're finding places to save resources, especially in this era where everyone is good, then that's great, because if you've got a different character in mind, then trying to stick to your plan is, and I am no advocate. I'm not very good at sticking to my plan some of the times, but I try my best to, and you know. But I think that it's okay to break on these things as well, and you never know that if you see how Ace is played, you might really like the way he looks, and if you get him by being lucky, you might try to enjoy him and discover something new. There's so many different facets to these things, and I think that this era is going to be really interesting going forward, just because of how widespread everybody is and how sort of subjective a lot of this stuff is going to be. There are basically no objectively bad characters going forward. So that's going to be all from me today. Thank you all very much for watching. Let me know in the comments below whether you're pulling for Ace, Bartz, Kimahri, Faris, or if you're not pulling. Honestly, at this point, I think I'm more interested to know which banners people aren't pulling on than the ones that they are, because obviously everyone talks about the banners that they're ready to pull on. They want this, they want that, they want everything, but people don't typically talk about the banners that they're not too fussed about. So I'm very interested. If you sound off in the comments below and let me know which banners going forward that you've looked at and you kind of think, oh, I can live without that. I think that that's actually a just as interesting topic as the ones that people are pulling on. Anyways, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for future notifications on other Dissidia videos I'll be making. And that's going to be it from me. So thank you all very much, and I'll see you soon. Take care.